Now, this is a website that lists agents of Hollywood celebrities who represents, but the URL looks like this, Hall Presence. So not a very good name, right? Pen Island is a company that sells pens on the internet, very innocent, but the website doesn't look so innocent, right? Therapist Finder, well, I thought this website was quite popular with FBI agents for quite a number of years because the URL actually reads like the rapistfinder.com. Then there was another website that gives advice to software programmers, Experts Exchange. Nothing wrong with that, right? Except until you look at the URL, it looks like expertsexchange.com. There are many, many such examples on the internet. I found a lot of these examples when I was writing another book of mine called Get a Name that talks about the 10 rules of naming if you want to create a great brand name. Again, I won't go into details of these books, but these are the 10 rules of naming that you need to look at if you want to create a great brand name, right? Rule number 8 is you need to be consistent. Because when people look at your brand, they see two things. They will always see two things. The first thing they see is a brand promise. The second thing they need to see is delivery. No matter what your brand promise is, right? You make sure that it is clearly communicated. When people look at a brand, even if you don't articulate your brand promise, they will see a certain brand promise. They look at a brand, they see a promise. They look at your brand, they see a certain brand promise. And you better deliver on that promise consistently, or the brand is damaged. Unlike 25, 30 years ago, if a brand is damaged today, there is usually very little you can do to recover from it, unless you are already a multi-billion-dollar giant. Most of us are not. That is why we need to be careful that the brand promise is consistently delivered upon, right? Rule number 9, a lot of parents actually didn't like this when they first, a lot of my clients who have kids, didn't like this when they saw this. They say, hey, why do I have to make an enemy or two? I tell my kids when they go to school, play nice, make friends, not enemy. And here you are telling us to make an enemy or two. Well, when you go to school, yes, play nice, make friends, not enemies. But if you want to build a strong brand, you do need to make an enemy or two. Because enemies give your brand a reason to exist. Your customers are going to think, if you're not here to fight anything or to fight anyone, why are you here, right? So enemies are important because they give your brand a reason to exist. And also your enemy doesn't have to be a competitor. A lot of people define the enemy as a competitor. Nowadays, when I do branding projects for my clients, I forbid my clients to define the enemy as a competitor. I mean, they still have competitors, which we try to beat, but the enemy that they fight needs to be something bigger than a competitor. It can be anything. As long as the enemy is big, it is scary, it is relevant to your customers. Then you have more reason to exist. If you just exist to fight another company, everybody does that. But if you exist to fight something that is a lot bigger, a lot scarier, then it will get you noticed, right? The last rule of branding is you need to launch a second brand at some point in your brand journey, because one brand can only stand for one idea. One brand can only dominate one category. Now, if you look at new products, 90% of new products fail within 3 years. And many of these new products that fail, right, they are actually line extensions. If you go to business schools, if you look at marketing and branding blogs, most of them will give you the top 5 reasons why new product fails, top 20 reasons why new product fails. I have seen all kinds of reasons given as to why new products fail, except the right reason. Most new products that fail, you will find that they are line extension brands. Line extensions are basically like this. You take a brand that is known for A, you try to make it stand for X. Those things don't work, not in the hyper-competitive business environment that you operate in today. Now, imagine this, a Xerox computer. Xerox spent about 20 billion US dollars between 1960 to 1980 to develop all kinds of things at their Palo Alto Research Center. including computers. They were great computers, I was told, by engineers, but nobody wanted to buy them because Xerox equals photocopiers. HP developed a line of plasma TVs to compete with Panasonic. Didn't work. They discontinued it because HP doesn't equal TV, right? Hyundai created a luxury car 6 years ago. They branded it as Hyundai. I think nobody wanted to buy it, so they had to rebrand it 2 years ago as Genesis, a much better name, right? So a lot of people look at items number 3 and number 4. They say there's nothing wrong with Colgate toothbrush. I buy Colgate toothbrush, but then I asked them, I said, do you use the Colgate manual toothbrush or the Colgate electric toothbrush? A lot of people told me the manual toothbrush. Now, the Colgate manual toothbrush is usually about $2.95. The Oral-B manual toothbrush is $14.95. So Colgate is known for toothpaste, Oral-B is known for toothbrush. So I asked most of these people, if Colgate were to price its toothbrush at $14.95, the same as Oral-B, would you still buy a Colgate? Everybody said no. If it's $14.95, I will buy an Oral-B. So I asked them, what about $9.95? If Colgate prices its toothbrush at $9.95 versus Oral-B is $14.95, would you still buy a Colgate? Most people said no, right? Then I asked them, what about $6.95? If Colgate were to price its toothbrush at $6.95 versus Oral-B's $14.95, would you still buy a Colgate? Half of the people say no. So the moral of this story is that if you use a line extension brand, your brand is known for A, you want to make it stand for X, you better be prepared to sell cheap. Sometimes even if you sell a line extended brand really cheap, people still won't buy. Look at Kodak. Kodak is known for 35mm photographic film. Nobody wanted to buy Kodak digital cameras, even though they were quite cheap. It's like the average Kodak digital camera in those days, $199 versus the Canon XS, which is like $895, but people still bought the Canon XS, not the Kodak digital cameras, right? So if you use a line extension brand, there's a lot of danger there. You must be prepared to sell cheap, but even when you sell cheap, sometimes people don't buy. Now, putting all this into action, if you want to take on a branding exercise, there are 3 things that must be in place. These 3 things I cannot assess for you. You better be honest with yourself that you have all these 3 things. The first thing is your systems and processes must be in place. They must be stable. They must be able to deliver what you promise customers. Your systems don't have to be the best in the world, but they must be able to deliver what you promise customers. The second thing is quality. Your product or service quality, depending on whether you're a product or service company, must be at least as good as your key competitors, plus minus 5%. Your quality doesn't have to be the best in the world, but must be at least as good as your key competitors. The third thing is your people. They don't have to be grade A plus or A star, they can be B average, B minus, even a C plus, I don't care. But they need to know their job well enough to deliver what you promise customers, or it will render your brand useless. So systems, quality, and people. These are the things that I cannot assess. You have to do the assessment yourself and be honest, right? Now, the 3 basic modules that are usually needed in a branding exercise is, yes?
5 more minutes.
Okay, almost done. The last slide. Now, the 3 basic modules that are usually needed in a branding exercise is the brand position, because this is a statement of strategic intent covering, that provides direction for the brand. It covers things like your vision, the future that you want to create, mission, category, brand values, the enemy, value proposition. Value proposition means the number 1 benefit that you bring to customers. The second item that is usually needed, these are just the basic items, is brand research to determine what your top 10 competitors' strengths and weaknesses are and how they could be differentiated against you so that we can develop a strategy against them. And usually the third module is brand differentiator. This is where we will look at the 13 strategies of differentiation to find one that can truly differentiate your brand. I have come close to failing this part for my clients on 3 or 4 occasions. On those occasions, if I could not find a way to differentiate my client, I will ask them, are you willing to sell cheap? Can you sell cheap? They say cannot. So they can't sell cheap, and I couldn't find a way to differentiate them. So I asked them, I said, are you willing to invest in certain innovation initiatives to find a differentiator? Some of them were willing to do it, and today they are very successful listed companies, with high profit margins. There were a couple who were not willing to invest in innovation, right? So those companies, I actually recommended that they sell away all their assets and close shop. And one of them was a listco. I told the founder, I say, sell everything away, delist the company, close shop. He was extremely angry with me, but I said, look, if you don't do this within 4 years, you will die anyway. And the brand died within 2.5 years. Really sad. So these are the 10 rules of branding. This is a summary of the 10 rules of branding. I will share these slides with you later. So if you have, do we have time for questions, Glenn?
Questions? You can either unmute yourself, or you can, yes, we have time for a quick question. So you can unmute yourself to ask a few questions. If not, you can also post it on the chat group. Does anyone have a question?
Yes, hi. This is Yavon here. A question on this launching a second brand, your Colgate and the Oral-B example. What then, if do you believe that if Colgate launch a second brand, they will be able to compete with Oral-B? Is something that consider that it's very expensive to create a brand in the same category when there's already a strong dominant brand?
It is very expensive to launch a second brand, yes, but companies like Colgate, they are rich enough, they have enough resources to actually do that. Whether they can actually launch a second brand and defeat Oral-B, that's another story, right? But at least they probably don't have to sell cheap. You see, if you look at Oral-B, right, what makes them different? If you look at Oral-B's tagline is, the brand dentists use themselves worldwide. So they managed to get most of the dentists in the world to use Oral-B. So that is a very powerful brand differentiator. It would be extremely difficult to defeat Oral-B based on that, but at least you don't have to sell cheap. If you can find a new category of toothbrushes. Okay, for the longest time, right, Oral-B electric toothbrushes were running on nickel metal hydride batteries. They only last a few days, right? So if I were Colgate 5 years ago, right, I use Oral-B and I complain all the time that the batteries don't last very long. I complain to my dentist say, there's nothing you can do about this. It is what it is, right? So if you were Colgate and you launch a new category called lithium ion powered electric toothbrushes, that might have worked just like Duracell when they launched the alkaline battery, right? I mean, it worked really well because it's a new category. But now, as of last year, Oral-B has smartened up. They have launched that lithium ion powered electric toothbrush. I have one at home. It's made in Germany. It's cost a lot of money. It's like close to $180, but I bought it anyway because the battery lasts 3 weeks instead of 4 days, right? So yeah, I think Colgate could have done it if they have moved a bit earlier. Any other questions?
Hi, Jackie, this is Jonas.
Hi, Jonas.
Yes. Quick question. What would your advice be for solopreneurs to SME types, especially wanting to build a brand during difficult times like this with this pandemic crisis? What should we be paying attention to?
Rule number 4 of branding, which is focus. Narrow down the focus. If you are a solopreneur, as you call it, you are one person. For example, you can do 10 things. You tell people, I can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all these 10 things, right? It will sound too good to be true. Then you become an incredible brand. What is an incredible brand? An incredible brand is a brand that has very little credibility. If you tell people that you can do 10 things, equally well, nobody's going to believe you. It may be true. You may be able to do all those 10 things equally well, but then people's perception is like that. If it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So you do need to narrow the focus on one thing. That means your spearhead needs to be the one thing that you do better than anyone else, right? I can probably do 4 or 5 things reasonably well. I don't tell people I can do this 4 or 5 things reasonably well. I tell people I only know one thing and one thing only. I have a one-track mind. I only know how to do brand strategy. That's it. Although I do develop business models for my clients, I'm helping clients successfully to pitch for investment and all these things, but I don't tell people that. I just focus on branding. That's it. So narrow the focus.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Last question. Anyone has a last question?
One last question. Anyone?
Okay.
Then I just asked another question, Yabun here again. On your second brand, does it apply very strongly also for B2B kind of business? Your examples, a lot of them are more, even though it's a lot more B2C, but for brands like whatever IBM, SAP of the world, you know, if they want to launch a new product, do they create sub-brands, or they should create new brands?
Okay, it depends on whether those new products are closely related to the core product, right? So IBM started with mainframes, then they stepped down to workstations, and then personal computers, and then laptops. They are all computers, they are all related, so okay. But if IBM were to go into something else, right? Something else, they want to make, name me something. They want to make something that is not related, I would say launch a second brand, right? But in IBM's case, they are still $100 billion company. Their annual revenue is close to about 100 billion US, if I'm not mistaken, 94 to 100. They got an early start. When companies like that, they get an early start, they made billions in the early years. They have first mover advantage in most of the things they do. So they could use the IBM brand on anything they want, as long as it's within the computing industry. Software, hardware, doesn't really matter, right? But if you are, because they have first mover advantage, they had very few competitors in those days, so they could do whatever they want. But if today you are a B2B company, you are known for A, and then you want to go into a new category, which is C. Even though they could be quite closely related, I would say launch a new brand, right? You have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. It depends on whether those two things are very, very similar. If you go into a new business or a new category that is almost identical or 80% similar to your core product, then I would say it's okay to use the same brand. Right?
Thank you.
Right.
Hey, hi, Jacky. May I just ask one last
Hi,
question?
Sure.
Hi. Okay, just want to ask example, if people like Zara, as fashion, they are some of the top fashion people, with so many outlets throughout the world, and with this issue of COVID, they definitely have very good branding. But like what the market has just said, it is the new abnormal that is going to be. So whatever happened to their branding right now, how could this take a new dimension? Because the game plan is totally upside down, and it's so different to come out. So what is the new dimension that you could see a brand like Zara moving forward?
The only change I see is how people buy from Zara. I mean, the brand doesn't change. The brand is all about just-in-time fashion, right, for Zara. So what made Zara so successful is that they have made fashion available very fast. Okay, I was told in the old days, right, it takes 9 months. It takes 9 months from concept to showroom. For any fashion brand, any new clothes or new bags or whatever. Zara has reduced it to 3 weeks, from 9 months to 3 weeks. That means from conceptualization to outlet to the market in 3 weeks. So it's just in time. So they will observe trends. They don't create. They observe upcoming trends, color trends and all these things, right? And they follow very fast. They create those new products very fast. So that was what made Zara successful, just-in-time fashion. That is never going to change. The only thing that will change is how people interact with Zara, how people buy from Zara. That means from physical stores to maybe more online sales. That's the only difference that I see.
Okay, guys, I really have to because I want to keep our timing short. We're very overrun already. If you guys have any more questions, you can always go back. Jacky, can you stop your screen share so that we can try and wrap up? Our next speaker is actually Alan, and I just want to some of you may already know Alan, but I think many of you may not. So I'll basically do a quick introduction of Alan. Alan is a good friend and partner, and someone that I've been working with and had the privilege to be working with closely for the last 2 years. I find him very entertaining, and he's quite funny, but
he is entertaining.
He has a wealth of experience from his early days with IE and the Trade Development Board, and little stories that he shares, which many of you may not know. But he was the grant officer, I mean, the junior officer that was signing your Bread Talks and your Charles and Keith in the early days before they became household names. So he had the opportunity to see the brand plans from behind the scenes and see how the inner workings of what the government wants us to do and how to go about doing it and make that application. So from that perspective, it has also given me a sort of a personal view on how our stat box work, and I've always had this privilege, I mean, and I hope that during this time now, he will be able to sort of share that privilege a little bit with you guys, and then to also get you an understanding of how some of our policies are changing and what we're doing. So without further ado, I will then pass the screen over to Alan. Your show.
Unmute. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks, Glenn, for the introduction. Maybe before I go into this topic, which is quite difficult to be funny with, I like to maybe also sort of echo what Jacky has shared. Now, that's what Brands for Good actually we have created and wanted it to be, so that Brands for Good can be a mouthpiece. It can be your publicity platform, all right? Just as Jacky said, right? Advertising, the effectiveness is low and it's very costly, but publicity is free, all right? So, and especially for companies that are doing good. Good meaning, they are not only making money, all right? We call it the double bottom line, right? They are also making a social impact, right? Either towards people or towards the environment, right? So we want to invite more of such companies to be part of us. So collectively, right, we can make an impact together, right? And I always see companies with this double bottom line as also serving the greater good, all right? So that's why also we try to do these things, right? And so going forward, we try to invite speakers like Charlie and Jacky, and to share their insight. And at the back of it, right, where there is a relevant government grant, right, then I can try and match it directly so that it's easier for you all to understand. All right. Okay, so let me start with this topic about government grants, right? Now, in all, Singapore government has many grants. So it's, so let me share it from 3 perspectives, right? Because they all apply in different way, right? You can look at it from applying it to your enterprise, your business, right? You can look at it from applying it to you as an employer, especially in trying to help you tide over difficult times, right? And you also apply to some call it employees, but it can also be individual, because some individual, when they are not employed, they are not an employee, right? So it can apply to the individual directly. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to focus a bit more on the enterprise and particularly on branding grant, right? The rest I'll skim through, and then we will, because there are too many. If I tell you everything now, so my experience usually people forget, after going through all the details. But anyway, most of it are actually on the website. So if you need, you can always refer to the website to help you refresh your memory. Okay, so let me start with the easy one, individuals. Now, we all know this entity called Skills Future, all right? So there are also, and I think also in the wake of, COVID, government has made 3 announcements already, right? Unity, resilience and solidarity budget, and they all apply. There are the goodies for all the different parts, all right, of the whole economy, right? The individuals, the employers, and also the enterprise. So for individual, I think primarily Skill Future is it, right? And so there are talks about top-ups and all that. For the employer, I'm sure you heard of this organization called WSG, and of course they work very closely. Now in Singapore, there's a lot of agency committee, right? So sometimes grants are, one will administer, one will be the sort of the brains behind it, right? So they design it, they create it, but not necessarily they will implement. And sometimes they may implement through another agency, okay? And because of that, sometimes the rules are all different, all right? So it doesn't mean the rules that apply to WSG is the same as ESG, right? They are different. And if you look at, all right, just for employees alone, these are all the grants, okay? So I think the popular one that I think the easy one is PMAX, right? Then we heard of a professional conversion program, which is I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.